Welcome to today's process video. I'm Tracy, also known as MercyTiara, and today I'll be creating a layout with a patterned paper background. This is a fun approach that can sometimes feel a little tricky, so throughout the video, I'll be sharing 4 unique tips for using patterned paper as a background, so be sure to stay tuned to the end to catch all of them. I am starting by going through what's left of my Cuddle Up kit, which was the MercyTiara kit for the month of October. I've already created these 2 pages with this kit. And today I'm going to be documenting our international students' birthday celebration, which we had at a local restaurant. So I'm going to start by actually repackaging some of these thickers. I do like to repackage my thickers, and although it's not part of my scrapbooking process, I usually do this before I start with a kit, but this month I was a little rushed and just jumped into scrapbooking and made those other 2 pages without even packaging these 2 sets of thickers. I do like to repackage my thickers into these 6 by 12 inch poly bags because it makes them a lot easier to slide in and out, and it just makes my scrapbooking process a lot smoother and quicker. So I'm going to be combining these 2 photos. One is a horizontal and one is a vertical. That also can be a little tricky, but I'm basically going to make them create an L shape on my page, although it's going to end up being changed into a sideways L, but either way, an L-shaped format is a really good way to scrapbook these combinations of horizontal and vertical photos. And basically that allows you to do it as one chunk. It's actually going to be a rectangular chunk with an empty space where there's no photos, and that's going to be where my title, or sometimes I might put journaling and that sort of thing. So the main thing that I want to talk about today is the use of pattern papers as backgrounds. One of the best ways to use a busy pattern paper background, see, I've got all these patterns picked out and they're very busy with one another. And I'm not sure that I'm going to use all of them, but I definitely want to use a combination of them. So because pattern paper backgrounds can be very busy looking, I like to provide a lot of structure in the rest of my layout, and so that's why I am going to be double matting my photos just to give them a lot more structure and presence on the page and separation from all of the busyness on the background. So this structure gives me lots of contrast, which what will be a busy and organic background. So I'm starting with the pink layer of cardstock, and then I matted the entire chunk onto a piece of brown cardstock as well. So that gives me quite a bit of presence for those photos and separation, so that all those details in the busyness of the photos, because they're busy too, it doesn't get lost and starting to feel like it's spilling out onto the page. Those 2 edges, I mean, I've really got 3 edges because you've got the white edging on the photos as well as those 2 other colored lines that separate my photos from my background. That gives me lots of separation so that these photos can really stand out even against a fairly busy background. This use of a darker paper for a triangular, almost like a corner. It's almost like a photo corner that I'm going to create here, but they're so big that they're actually more of just a triangular layer. These are going to give me even more definition between my background and my foreground. I'm just going to cut those with my trimmer, and I cut them so that they're pretty similar angles of triangles, and I'll put them like that. I would love to use this strip of torn paper, but I'm not going to end up using it. My second idea for using a busy pattern paper background is to mix it up a little bit because it can be a lot of one pattern. And so just to add a little bit of interest, I am actually going to make this a split background. So it's going to be mostly the plaid pattern, the diagonal plaid, but at the bottom here, there's going to be a little bit of that floral peeking through, and it's going to be torn and showing from the back. Now that top piece of paper, it's like a blue pattern paper, that's just to mask off the top part of the plaid so that I can see what this proportion is going to look like when it is 12 by 12. So that's just allowing me to design this so that it feels balanced on the page with the other elements. So I took note of where on my grid mat, my gray grid mat that I work on, I took note of where everything was lining up so that I can recreate that look. I'm going to put it right around there. I'm going to basically take a strip off. I tore it once with my ruler just to get the right length. And now I'm going in with just my hands and tearing it in a little bit of a more organic way. Because when I tear with my ruler, I do get a nice tear, but it's very, very straight and it doesn't look like a natural tear. So I'm just going back and tearing it off. I don't want it super up and down. I just want it to be not quite so perfect. So I added some imperfections there. I'm also using my hands to just pull up the edges, curl them a little bit so that there will be all the more texture on this page. So my photo will sit on this diagonal plaid area, and then the bottom will have the contrast of this little extra bit of floral pattern. And in order to make sure that my resulting page is 12 by 12, I'm just using my grid mat to make sure that I'm lining that up so that the whole thing is 12 inches tall once those two papers are layered upon one another. So I am really liking how this looks. I think that those two principles are working really well for me so far. So one is to make sure that you have lots of structure on the layers on top. And the second one is to break up that pattern background a little bit by adding a second pattern. As far as combining patterns goes, if I'm combining two like that, I want to make sure that I'm not combining two of the same pattern. So I wouldn't want to put a second plaid down there, and I wouldn't want to use a floral on a floral. I like the idea of a plaid with a floral, or you could put a geometric with a floral, or stripes or dots with a floral. Now, my third tip for using a busy pattern paper background is to make good use of white space or negative space on your page. Now, that space right below the horizontal photo, the one with Ellie with the birthday cake in front of her, you'll notice that there's a blank space there. I'm going to keep that blank space there. I am going to put something on it, but it's going to be mostly blank. So you'll see me audition a few different things here. I'm looking for something that is either a tone on tone or a solid. Now see how busy that's going to look if I use a pattern? Now this coral is not quite the right color because it's going to introduce way too much coral. There's already quite a bit of pink and orangey tones in both the photo and the background. And this piece of paper, as much as I love it, I'm not going to be able to get this paper onto this layout either. So what I think I might do is skip this step for now and I will come back to it. This is what I do when I can't decide on something is I'll just percolate on the idea. And as I do so, this brings me to tip number 4, which is to use larger scale embellishments when you have a busy patterned background. See how these larger leaves and flowers really stand out on that plaid background? If I was using tiny little delicate flowers, of which there are some in these packs, they would really get lost on the background and it would give a very hectic, overwhelming, busy feel to it. Whereas because I'm choosing flowers and leaves that have fairly big, open, almost like negative space within the embellishment, that gives a more of a calming effect on this page. Now I'm pulling out my cut aparts. These are cut aparts that I provide to my tiaras over on Patreon. If you support me over there on the highest level, then the highest 2 levels, you will receive a free digital file each month as a thank you from me for supporting my channel. And this is one of them. And I'm going to punch out some shapes here because I feel like my embellishments that I have in my stash that came with the Cuddle Up kit are just not meeting my needs here. So I'm going to add a few things from these cut aparts. There is a cut apart phrase confetti or word confetti, which I have printed onto sticker paper. I don't think I'm going to actually use, oh yes, I will use one of those on this page. And then there's also these punchable shapes that are different each month. And so I'm using my 1-inch punch to punch these out. And therefore, that way I have a bunch of little circular embellishments, and they're fairly simple embellishments, so they will work well on this layout with a fairly busy background. I continue to look for something to put in that space. I want it to be a solid or at the very least a tone-on-tone pattern. And I'm going to go with this mustard paper, which was facing the other way, so I didn't realize that mustard was an option. And once I flipped it over and saw it, it was an easy choice to make. I can't remember why I changed printers or trimmers here. I think that, oh yes, I think that my other trimmer needed to be fixed. It needed the little strip to be replaced. I'm measuring here. I don't normally use measuring on any of my layouts. I usually eyeball everything, but where I am trying to make a very specifically sized piece of paper to fit in that little open space, I had to measure the open space so that I knew what I was working with. And even then, even after measuring it, I had to trim it down a little bit with my little trimmer. So this fills in that space and finishes that off. It's going to be the home for my title. So the title will go on that mustard rectangle at some point. These little circle embellishments add just a little bit of detail, but because they're on a plain circular background, they stay with my tip of using larger scale embellishments in that they're not terribly detailed and tiny. I'm just having a look at what else is in the kit that I might be able to work onto this page. I'm wondering about titles at this point. I know I want my title to fit on that rectangle, but I still don't know exactly what it's going to be. Sometimes I will choose my photo at the very end, and other times I know what my photo is as soon as I pick up the photo, I know what the title is going to be. But at this point, I'm still not sure what the title is going to be. I'd like to put some tabs. These embellishment sets that came in the kit had some really cute tags that I want to, or tabs I should say, that I really want to get on this page. And combining one of those circular cut aparts with a tag or a label is a really nice way to add a little bit of interest to an embellishment. At this point, again, I'm percolating on a couple of ideas. What will my title be is my main question at this point. So while I do that, I will just glue some things down because some of these ideas I already know I like. So anything that I'm ready to commit to, I'll just put some glue on it. And this is my strategy for building embellishments is I tend to build them by connecting them to one another and connecting them to my photos. And then I'll have this large chunk that includes the photos and all the embellishments all attached to it. And then I can move it around on my page and decide exactly where I want it to lie on the overall page so that it's a balanced look at the very end. I'm just looking for a journaling pen here and gonna shift a few things around just to give it a little bit of balance. But this page is almost done. It needs, obviously it needs a title, but we're getting there. Gonna add some little details. So just because I did say that one of my tips was to use larger scaled embellishments, that doesn't mean that you can't put any small embellishments on a page like this. Look at that, I created 2 embellishments. Those are actually not gonna go on this page, but they're nice little combos of embellishments that work well together. So I just stuck them to each other to use on another page. Making pre-made embellishment clusters is a really fun thing to do with your leftovers from a kit, by the way. I added that little tag, or the tab, I should say, that says thankful in green, just tucked it underneath of the mushroom cut apart embellishment. And then I'm going to connect these 3 items. So I have a little sprig of leaves, again, larger scale leaves, and also a little, it's actually 2 items. That circle has the mushroom attached to it already. So I am thinking I'm going to combine the 2 letter stickers that come in the kit, which are those large blocky Vicky Bouton letter stickers, and then these smaller, they are a puffy wood grain sticker from the collection called Cedar House from American Crafts. And I am going to use these. I'm pulling out something that I haven't used in a long time, which are my thicker alignment tools. These are some curvy type rulers that you can use to place letter stickers on different, like in different shapes. And so I have the straight one, which I can't find anymore, and I also have a couple of the curvy ones. So I am spelling out the word sweet to wrap around the word 16. So I'm just putting it on this little curve. And the thicker alignment tools come with a variety of different, some are curves and some are waves at different angles. So this one seems to work well with my number 16 here. But it's blending in a little bit too much with my background, so I am definitely going to want to put something behind my title. So I went into the label stickers. These labels, they're not stickers, they're just labels. They are from the digital file that comes with the main Cuddle Up kit. So all of the MercyTiara main kits do come with a downloadable printable, and they are different size labels with colors that coordinate with the kit. So I'm going to use that to hold my title, and look at how well it works. That angle of the word sweet is very similar to the angle of that oval. Now I have two labels, label-y embellishments that look way too similar to one another. So I'm going to not use that circle with the mushroom on it, and instead I'm going to use this, and I'm thinking about putting some of these embellishments on either side of the word sweet 16, because see how there's so much white space there? I definitely want to cover that up. I know I want to use white space, but it's looking a little bit too white and gaping. If it were a color, it might look a little bit more calm, but I wasn't liking the way that it was looking. So I'm going to put the sunflower chipboard piece on one side, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do with the other side yet. But that acorn was just not cutting it. It was a little bit too small. So I'm looking at what else I might have on hand here. And I do have this mushroom die cut piece. But if I use that mushroom die cut piece, I want to do something to it to make it a little bit more similar to the piece of chipboard on the other side of it, so that they look like they coordinate a little bit better. So I started by popping it up with foam adhesive. That way it's at least on the same level as the chipboard. But as you can see here, the chipboard has a little bit of sheen to it, so it's a little bit shinier than the other embellishments on the page. So I'm going to use my Nouveau Crystal Glaze to add a little bit of shininess to my mushroom. And this is the point at which we take bets on whether or not, or how long it will take for me to stick my thumb in that wet Nouveau Crystal Glaze. So leave me a comment below if you have a prediction for whether that mushroom is going to make it intact to the end of the designing of this page. And I'll let you know at the end of this video how it turned out. Now, because I'm not using that label, that circle label that had the mushroom attached to it, I need something else to go down here that's going to actually hold the caption that tells me where this photo was taken. So I grabbed one of those little label embellishments that I pre-made. I thought that it was for another layout, but it turns out this one is going to go on this layout. It has a combination of one of those little cut-aparts from my Tiara cut-aparts over on Patreon, and a little brad from the kit, and a tag from or a label, I guess, from the embellishments that came in the kit. I layered it on top using some foam adhesive on top of one of those large sprigs of leaves, and that finishes off that corner quite nicely. I wrote out the name of the restaurant, Freeman's Little New York. And then I also cut off this little cut apart. This is one of those phrases. These are cut onto sticker paper, so I just have to remove the backing and then stick it in place. And this one says today's story. And I just made it so it was protruding out from behind the acorn. This one up here says Life Right Now. And so I like repeating things. I didn't quite repeat it in threes this time, but threes are a really nice number to repeat your designs in. So I'm deciding where to center this on the page, and I'm keeping in mind that I want similar amounts of space to the right and to the left. And I want the whole thing to be straight, and that can be a little tricky to do with a patterned paper background. So I'm just using my T ruler to help with that. So far, so good with that little crystal glazed mushroom. It's holding up okay. I have not yet stuck a finger in it. And this is how this layout looks so far. We're almost done. I thought about putting a label down here on the floral part, but I ultimately decided not to. I don't think it really needs anything down there. And the main part of the layout holds everything that I need to have there. I'm going to use my ruler date stamp here to put the date just a little bit below that label that holds the name of the restaurant. It says 10 September 2024. And I am going to add a tiny little sprinkling of some of the confetti mix that comes in the main kit. I'm going to be very selective here because, as I said, it's good to keep most of your embellishments on the larger scale. These little tiny sequins, they give really nice detail to a layout like this, but I want to use them very conservatively here. So I'm just placing them on other embellishments. I'm not putting any of them on the background because they'll just get lost there. And so I'm just placing them in little triads. And speaking of triads, we have a nice little visual triangle going on this page. We have a large cluster of embellishments up in the top left-hand corner, a smaller cluster of embellishments in the top right-hand corner, and then another even smaller cluster of embellishments in the bottom right-hand corner. And these three items draw your eye around the page. And if your eyes were to go from one to the other, you would take in the entire page, including both photos and the title. And the Nouveau Crystal Glaze mushroom survived, and it is still intact as I look at it right now. It did not get any fingerprints in it. Now, before we jump into the final photos and a bit of a recap of my 4 tips, I want to give a quick shout out to my amazing Patreon supporters. Those folks who were on the screen a second ago, they truly help make this channel happen, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of them. Tiaras get early ad-free access to all of my process videos, real-time unedited versions of my videos, and some behind-the-scenes content as well. Those tips for using pattern paper backgrounds, again, are to use bold structure to allow your elements to stand out from the background, to break up your background with different types of pattern, to balance it out with some white space and negative space, and to use larger scale embellishments on your projects with a pattern paper background. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon for more scrappy content. Have a really great scrappy week.